This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
A very good morning to you. It is 3 minutes after 10 and here we go again. I mean, who predicted this? Somebody, probably. The idea that Donald Trump was embarked upon some sort of exercise in 4D chess. Do you know what his trade secretary was doing yesterday? It was on the floor of Congress for 4 hours defending the policy that Donald Trump abandoned shortly before 7 o'clock yesterday evening. I had quite an interesting assignment last night. I don't laugh, all right, but I was at an event where I was charged with explaining to some extremely senior business people the state of UK politics. And of course, when the arrangement was made, when the event was arranged, the chaos of the last 2 weeks was not even on anybody's horizon. So everything that might have resembled a plan or a roadmap got turned upside down. And I thought, just before I started speaking, I'll just check my phone. I'll just double check my phone. And I had it primed to show me the US stock market, and I pressed refresh. I thought, this can't be right because it's rocketed again. So then, of course, I go to the news sites and I see that he's folded. He's blinked. He's removed all of the tariffs bar China's and put everybody else back on 10%. Here's the first scary thought of the morning. He says for 90 days. Who can look me in the eye and tell me that they believe him? This is the fundamental point, isn't it? Is that you cannot believe a single syllable coming out of the mouth of the President of the United States of America. You might argue that that has always been true, but I'm not sure it has ever been demonstrated or proved in quite such a definitive fashion. He could say anything now, and you could reasonably expect the opposite to be true. So, and of course, that's why the markets have gone bonkers, because they're desperate for a hint of what's going to happen. An online rumour that he was going to do what he then did a couple of days later caused a massive spike, and then another massive spike when he actually does the thing that he swore blind, and all of his closest allies swore blind that he would never do. I've been thinking a lot, as you know, since really the beginning of last week, what our job is at 10 o'clock every morning. What is the job that we should be doing together? What is the role that we play in this process? And I think you have to, even in times of epic confusion and quite deliberate chaos, what we have to do, and what I think that we have been doing quite well latterly, is focus on what's real. Focus on what's true. Focus on what is evident and what is provable. And then remind ourselves that when it comes to looking ahead, or when it comes to trying to understand things, you have to look at everything through the lens of Donald Trump's, what's the word? Psychopathy? Pathology? Donald Trump's almost unique psychological flaws, psychological makeup. So here's a thought. I don't know whether this has occurred to you yet or not, but the powers that Donald Trump invoked in order to do what he did with regards to the tariff announcements were emergency powers. They were, by definition, things that he is empowered by the Constitution to do only in circumstances of genuine emergency. That is what he did. He used emergency legislation to bring the tariffs in, which means, of course, that by lifting the tariffs or by pausing the tariffs, he is telling the world that they were not urgent and necessary, that there was not an emergency that could only be met by the introduction of emergency legislation for the tariffs. What is the emergency that suddenly disappeared at 7 o'clock yesterday evening? So that is something that in normal times, the US Congress and the American justice system would be able to hold the president to account for misuse of emergency powers. Just an illustration in the business, as I've outlined, of just trying to focus on what's true, what is factual, and what is real. In normal circumstances, the Congress or the courts would be hauling the US president over the coals for blatant lies, for misuse of legislation, for claiming that there was an emergency, introducing measures that were emergency measures, and then abandoning them with no apparent reason. Then we look at what the apparent reason may be. I haven't had the pleasure, really, yet of hearing people trying to pretend that this is what was intended all along, or I presume everybody now realises that the art of the deal is one of the most nonsensical labels to apply to anybody, let alone Donald Trump, whose name may be on the cover of the book of that title, but who had absolutely nothing to do with writing it, according to the ghostwriter who did. It's highly likely that Donald Trump hasn't even read The Art of the Deal, and yet various cronies, sycophants and losers continue to claim that the multiple bankrupt is some sort of genius. The reason why this happened, and I had this explained to me last night, and actually there's a rather good account of it on the front of the Irish Times today. It's always helpful at moments like this to have a look at some of the media from within the European Union, because they are not quite as bent or as broken as much of our media is by its absolute abandonment and dereliction of duty when it comes to everything from Brexit to Boris Johnson. So the losses on the stock markets since the tariffs were introduced are not the biggest story in town. It was when people started selling off US Treasury bonds, many of which are held by foreign governments. China and Japan hold a lot of US Treasury bonds. The clever money at the moment says that it wouldn't have been those countries that were selling off the bonds. It would more likely have been hedge funds. And as US Treasury bonds are sold off, it's a little bit like, well, it's exactly like what happened to Liz Truss. There's a thing. It is almost, as I understand it, and you know I'm not a financier, there'll be people listening who are, and who will correct me, of course, if I'm getting this wrong. But as the US Treasury bonds are sold off, the cost of US government borrowing goes up. And the country's ability to finance its massive deficits are put into doubt. That, I think, is what causes the most disquiet among market analysts, warning yesterday of catastrophic consequences for the global financial system if there was a mass sell-off of US Treasuries. So, again, you know the number, 0345 6060973 is the number that you need to tell me that I'm barking up entirely the wrong tree. But once that sell-off starts, then all of the institutions, which can be a country or a fund or a bank, or all of the institutions and individuals that hold those bonds begin to get a little bit scared, begin to get a little bit spooked. And as we saw during Liz Truss's fiscal event, which I would remind you, Nigel Farage described as the best budget he'd seen since 1986. The Daily Mail greeted it with a front page clarion call of praise, describing it as finally a true Tory budget. Daily Telegraph pundits and columnists queued up to tell you that what Liz Truss was doing was a work of complete genius. The so-called Institute of Economic Affairs, which incredibly continues to be booked by various programs and quoted in various newspapers, tried to take the credit for the whole thing. As Liz Truss set fire to the British economy, so the sale of bonds put the cost of borrowing into almost unimaginable places. And that is the direction of traffic that Donald Trump instigated over the last 4 days. On Tuesday evening, he was giving a speech to Republicans in which he insisted there was absolutely no way he was going to back down. There was absolutely no way he was going to blink. So a Donald Trump supporter is reduced today to saying, oh, he's great, isn't he? He's such a good liar. Just think about what that means for politics, for the global world order. Donald Trump, anyone pretending this was deliberate, and I'll play you a clip shortly from Fox News of all places that pins this problem down quite precisely. Anybody pretending that this was the plan all along, or that this was some sort of act of genius rather than a massive bluff and then a cowardly retreat, cowardly but necessary, is essentially saying to you, oh, I love that guy, he's so good at lying. I can think of many other worlds in which being really good at lying turns you into some sort of hero. I love Donald Trump. He's so good at lying. He lied to me. I've lost my pension. I'm going to have to work for 2 more. He's such a great liar. Some of his mates made loads of money. He's such a great liar. We'll have a look at the insider trading argument shortly. I'm not sure it's as true as my inbox suggests. Many people listening to this think that it is. The markets wobbled, of course, yesterday morning, and it's this fear of a Liz Truss. Who'd have thought that we'd be sitting here saying it was the fear of a Liz Truss-style scenario that prompted him to go onto social media trying to whip everybody up into an enthusiastic frenzy, telling people it was a good time to buy, trying to, if you like, vivify the markets, trying to boost the markets. But it didn't work. This is what his social media posts were about throughout yesterday. It failed. The markets were not reassured. The day saw increasing worries specifically about the bond market. And here's the line from the front page of today's Irish Times. The bond market, traditionally a safe haven for investors in times of turmoil on the market. And that started wobbling. That started looking worrying. And that, I think that is what left Donald Trump with no choice. And whether this comes from his own pitiful intellect or whether it is essentially being imposed upon him by the people around him, that left him with little or no choice but to roll over, but to fold, but to blink. And that, at 10:15, give or take a few seconds, is where we find ourselves this morning. I don't really understand how anybody could be arguing or claiming that what we saw yesterday was anything other than an epic humiliation, an epic public humiliation for the President of the United States of America. The nearest thing you can come to a sinister master plan is that it was a huge exercise in insider trading designed to enormously enrich him or his closest cronies. I'll tell you after the next break why I don't think that is true. And what you are left with is, to my mind, an unassailable account there of precisely what has happened. Donald Trump, using what you might describe as the sort of psychology of dominance, thought. Did you see the speech where he actually? I hesitate to use this sort of language, and it's 10:15 on a Thursday morning. And I still hesitate to use this language, but he talked about countries queuing up to kiss his ass. How many moments are there where you find yourself just noting how far we've fallen? The President of the United States of America sounding like a kind of a pimply, obnoxious teenage boy. They're queuing up to kiss my ass, he claimed. American media this morning have asked for a list of the 75 countries that have reportedly been in touch with the White House pleading for special treatment or pleading for negotiation on the tariff front. And guess what? The White House has refused to provide a list. A spokesman said there are 75 countries seeking to renegotiate their tariffs, but they go to a different school. Obviously, a spokesman didn't really say that, but that is the psychology of the spotty adolescent. Incredible, really, to reflect upon the fact that that kind of language barely registers with us now. The President of the United States talking about countries queuing up to kiss his ass. And of course, if they had been doing that, then he would have opened negotiations, announced some sort of deals, and not been compelled to climb down in the most humiliating and spectacular fashion. I may open Idiot's Corner today. I can't quite imagine what somebody trying to defend this or claiming that this latest behaviour is anything other than what we've just described. But I do have a sort of grim fascination with the contortions undertaken by people who, for reasons I don't fully understand and which are probably more psychological than political, who find themselves utterly unable to admit the scale of their mistake, who find themselves utterly unable, I guess because the biggest thing that Donald Trump gave people was permission to be racist in public again. And for some people, that's such an intoxicating gift, such an intoxicating invitation that they will forgive him everything else and humiliate themselves, ultimately, by claiming that this is anything other than what we have just described. So, as ever at the moment, when we turn our attention to Donald Trump, there are essentially two questions. Do you think I've got this right? Does that account to you? Fill in all the gaps. Does that account fit the facts as they are? 0345 6060973. Remember, if you're going to defend it, then what you're doing is saying it's brilliant that he's such a good liar. I love being lied to, is what you're essentially saying. And again, there can sometimes be a sub to that. Who remembers that caller we had last time Donald Trump came to London, who rang up and said, I know he's a massive liar, but I love it because it upsets people like you and Sadiq Khan. Whether or not that keeps you warm as your pension plummets, I do not know. But that's question number one. What do you think happened? Is it anything other than an epic humiliation? And question number two is kind of scary. It's not at the moment the question about what Keir Starmer should do. We've asked that a lot of times, and it's in some ways a pointless inquiry, because you can talk about what he should do with the facts as they stand at 18 minutes past 10 on a Thursday morning, but by 22 minutes after 10 on a Thursday morning, the facts may have changed completely, and therefore the correct course of action for a UK Prime Minister has been ripped up and rewritten. So that's not it. But do you want to have a go? It may be too soon, it may be too big, but I'd love you to try. Do you want to have a go at what happens? What happens now? Everything is broken. Most fundamentally, the truth is broken. That any pretense, any semblance of what words come out of the White House being in any way related to or attached to reality has been completely broken. It's a moment of epic significance. It's not a self-contained moment. It's a culmination, not an aberration. We've been heading in this direction since the beginning of his first term, but we are witnessing the complete collapse of two things: the relationship between government and truth, and the relationship between action and consequence. What he was reminded of yesterday is that he can create an ecosystem in which his actions have no consequences, politically or in terms of the people around him. Any mystery as to why he's appointed an absolute cornucopia of crackpots, why he has people around him who would struggle to punch their way out of a wet paper bag in intellectual terms, became crystal clear. He can only survive in this form if he's surrounded by people who are either stupid or absolutely bent double with sycophancy. It's an extraordinary state of affairs, but one that makes perfect sense when you see the conduct of the last 24 hours. But what on earth does the future look like? With a complete collapse of truth, a complete abandonment of any pretext under which the words coming out of the White House can be trusted, and 4 more years to go. What on earth does the future look like? 6 months from now? 12 months from now? 2 years from now? 4 years from now, when a newly installed President of the United States will be roughly 100 days into their first term. And of course, given what I've just described to you about the complete collapse of truth, even that, and norms, regulations and rules, the rule of law, traditions, constitutional requirements, I cannot say to you with certainty that there will be a new President of the United States in situ 4 years from now. It could be the same one who has just broken yet more laws, broken yet more constitutional requirements, yet more regulations, yet more traditions. He has, after all, or he seems, after all, determined to break everything. So against that backdrop, what does the near, the middle, or the distant future look like? So those are your questions. That's your homework. That's your starter for 10. What happened yesterday? 0345 6060 973. And what does it do to your understanding or belief of what the future looks like? 0345 6060 973. It's 10:21.
James O'Brien on LBC.
And of course, the slightly weird, what's the word, Schadenfreude, or the uncomfortable pleasure that we might have taken in watching the sycophants and the client journalists contort themselves to pretend that what Donald Trump did yesterday was the plan all along, didn't even arrive on Platform 2. Fox News, not a platform I turn to very often, perhaps articulated the problem better than anywhere else, precisely because of who and where it is that this analysis unfolded.
Quite the moment, as you can imagine, the art of the deals all over the Twitter sphere right now, as people say, I mean, maybe this is the way he planned it. To John's point, Charlie, about the Treasury Secretary saying maybe you could say that he goaded China into a bad position for themselves. Well, don't retaliate. Things will work out well, he said.
I mean, I want to tell you right now that Donald Trump outsmarted the world. Trust me, I'm an American. I support my president. But that's not really what happened here, from what I understand. And I know I'll get pushback, but Here's what it is. First off, we should point out that one of the good things about this is that Scott Bessent is finally in the White House. He's finally leading this. I mean, up until a couple of days ago, it was Lutnick, it was Peter Navarro, the Commerce Secretary, the trade advisor, very much hawks. Now it's Scott Bessent, who believes in cutting deals as opposed to just just putting these tariffs out there and let's be a mercantilistic economy. That's number one. But number two, let's recall what happened overnight. And from what I understand, and I'm getting this from people that are talking to the White House, what happened in the bond market overnight, the spike in yields on the 30-year and the 10-year bond, which showed that people were dumping our bonds. And who were those people dumping our bonds? Japan, the biggest holder of bonds, was selling bonds. That's what I'm getting from some very big money managers. China, maybe to some extent, but it was largely Japan and others. If you have a mass sale of bonds, that means people are losing confidence in the U.S. economy, on the ability to do deals with us. And from what I understand, this is what forced the hand of this 90-day reprieve. Now, is it a good thing? Are people coming to the table? Yeah. But if you read between the lines, or not even what Scott Bessent said, we have no deals, right? There's nobody that is really there saying this is what we're going to do. And they paused it anyway.
So set that analysis from Fox Business senior correspondent Charlie Gasparino, not a man, I think, who's appeared on this program before. Set that analysis alongside the White House's refusal to reveal any of the 75 countries that are reportedly queuing up to, forgive me, kiss the president's ass. And you have a pretty irresistible account of what happened yesterday. But we go from one Charlie to another, from Charlie Gasparino to Charlie in Putney. Charlie, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How are you?
Very well, mate.
Good. So I don't necessarily think insider trading was the goal from the start. However, I do think his hand was forced by the bond market, and the opportunity for insider trading 100% was taken. So do you know what a call option is, James?
Yes, I do. I think that the best phrase to use here is that the profits that some of his cronies will have made are a consequence.
100%.
A consequence of the chaos. It wasn't the reason for the chaos.
No, so that's what I'm saying. I'm not necessarily saying that was the reason, but I do think that they saw the option there, the opportunity, and the opportunity was taken. So did you see that he tweeted 4 hours before the announcement to buy DJT?
Yes, I do, but I think that was trying to restore confidence in the markets. He was trying to get people to act in a way that would stem the threat to the bond market that you just heard being described by the bloke from Fox News. See, I like your contribution.
The second point I want to come on to, James, just quickly, is the wider implications. So your second question of what happens now. Now, I would love to be wrong on this, and I hope I'm overreacting, but I think the wider implication is we're on the precipice of a catastrophic market collapse. The reasons for that, obviously, the reaction of the bond markets, as we just heard, is a reflection of confidence and perception of the US dollar, right? Now, if foreign investors have the same view as we're having, that insider trading may have taken place yesterday, if foreign investors start to view the US market as rigged or illegitimate on the scale we saw yesterday, capital outflows will spiral, right? You'll see massive outflows of capital. Foreign investors removing their money from American markets. Now, that will in itself will create a liquidity crisis, which at its core is what the 2008 meltdown was caused by, or certainly exacerbated by. Now, and that's not even before you get into the impacts of consumers, retail investors boycotting US companies on a global scale. So how is it? It's not going to get any better. What's going to happen after 90 days? I mean, again,
how much faith can you put? How much faith can you put in 90 days? Sorry, I'm talking over you. But how much faith can you put in 90 days? No, I've got no faith in 90 days.
None whatsoever.
You're not a million miles away from Gordon Brown this morning. I don't know whether you knew that. Gordon Brown warning in a brilliant article. No more than a narrow window of opportunity remains if we are to prevent an unnecessary global recession. And this, of course, is after yesterday's announcements, not before. A lot of people will have been writing analysis yesterday afternoon on deadline, expecting it to appear this morning in newspapers or last night online. And then they had to rip it all up and start again when the announcement came over Donald Trump's own social media platform. But the decoupling of China in the US, even without the context that you provide, would start trade wars so intense and so threatening that they can lead to currency wars, and then import, export, investment and technology bans, financial fire sales, millions of jobs destroyed. The question of how you can prevent that is one that Gordon Brown, in one of the best hooks and teases I've ever seen, Charlie, Gordon Brown finishes his article by saying, and tomorrow I'll tell you how we can avoid it. I don't know whether we can do a phone-in on that. Do you think it's inevitable? Do you think the chaos is inevitable?
Well, I don't see any other outcome. But you know that phrase, never attribute to never attribute to malice that which can be attributed to stupidity. Can one man and the cabinet surrounding him, can they really be that stupid? But this is what is frustrating. You talked about this the other day, is the amount of journalists, and I'm a subscriber to the FT, and it has me pulling my hair out every day, the number of articles written trying to fight and analyse it and look for, well, maybe he's got a point here and this could work, and I don't know what's going on, James. I'm so confused and so exhausted and tired.
You used that word.
From all of this.
I can't believe you just used that word. I nearly came on air this morning and said that it's so exhausting. Even when you're being proved right about things, it's exhausting. To answer directly your points, I think the Financial Times turned the corner in the last 2 or 3 days. Edward Luce and I think Gillian Tett have both written articles about the pointlessness of trying to analyse it. Edward Luce's article a couple of days ago, particularly pertinent in this field. But I've spoken on air about the toolbox, mate. It's what we do. It's our job. And I'm by no means in the same sphere as Financial Times contributors, but we bring a toolbox to a task. And the traditional tools in that box are fit for purpose. They are up to the task. Here's my spanner. Here's my wrench. If you press this button, if a politician does that, this will happen. And the toolbox is redundant. It takes a while for people to realise that the toolbox is redundant, and that, as we, I think, only arrived at on Monday or Tuesday, the only way you can even come close to analysing or understanding any of this is by looking at all of it through the lens of, and I'm going to say madness, for want of a better word, through the lens of Donald Trump's madness. We shall have a look. I said, there it is, the question of what the future holds. Charlie's provided us with the first answer, and it's not pretty, but it's pretty hard to pick holes in. Thomas Watts is here now with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
I'm glad at 10:36 that Charlie was the first caller today, because I think that he nailed, and if you're still listening, Charlie, a lot of praise coming in for your contribution. I think he nailed what my inbox is a little bit burdened with, which is the hot take that it was all a massive exercise in insider trading. And the facts, to a point, support that theory, because he did tweet or post on social media that everyone should buy DJT, everyone should buy. But I think, again, I turn you to the coverage in the Irish Times of all places. And if you're just joining me, the reason why I'm referring to the Irish Times is because on mornings like this, I find that media still yoked to the madness of Brexit is highly unreliable. And that, sadly, still accounts for almost all of the UK commentariat. But the point about the posts, I think, was to encourage the markets, to try to reassure the market. So he spent the afternoon posting exhortations, if you like, and they failed to reassure the markets. That was not the plan. The climb down was not the plan. I think I'd take this to the bank. I think this is a hill I'm prepared to die on. The climb down was not the plan. Because when you look at it all through the psychology of Donald Trump, the humiliation of having to do the opposite of what he said he was going to do, the most positive reading of it is that it makes him a massive liar. The most negative reading of it is that it makes him a massive failure. And he, as ever with a narcissist, is simply going to choose the most favourable option. And at the moment, he would rather be thought of as a massive liar, not least because some of his supporters will claim that his massive lies are actually somehow strokes of genius. He'd much rather be thought of as a massive liar than as a massive failure. So I can't prove it. I'm not sure anybody will ever be able to prove it, but it was not a kind of heist, a planned heist in plain sight. The profits made, and I've seen one clip, a hideous clip of him pointing at people in the Oval Office and saying, he made $2 million, he made $900 million, as if that were the plan all along, or as if that somehow vindicates the humiliation, the climb down. It was not the plan. It's a consequence of the chaos. The chaos was not caused in order to deliver that consequence. I really do think that is the case, but I don't want to sound disrespectful or unappreciative of everybody convinced otherwise, claiming that it is absolutely clear that it was a huge exercise in insider trading from the beginning to the end. And I like that from Jamie. It wasn't a tweet, James, he writes, from the president. It was a bleat. I think we might adopt that verb moving forwards. Hugh is in Edinburgh. Hugh, what made you pick up the phone?
Well, first of all, compliments to your commentary, James. I listened to you this morning, and I listen to you regularly on YouTube in particular these days. I used to roll Colin when I was in London. I'm now in Scotland, and I have to say that yours is the most literate and critical commentary to be found on public broadcasting of any kind in the UK. So well done for that. I agree largely with your analysis, although I would recommend you to look at Chris Hedges' YouTube column this morning, where he says, we should remind ourselves what Marx said about capitalism. He said, in the end, the crisis is inherent in capitalism will cause it to eat itself. It will destroy itself. And that's essentially what's happening with Trump and capitalism in America, and what's going to happen with China and the BRICS and so on. So there's a big dimension there. There's another dimension. I'm a former member of the European Parliament. There's a European dimension, which you, of course,
is that compulsory?
James.
Do you have to do that? Do you have to do that throat clearing after you announce that you're a former member of the European Parliament? It sounded like it was a contractual requirement. I'm a former member of the European Parliament. I love it. I love it. Hugh, that makes you Hugh Kerr. By my calculations, that makes you Hugh Kerr.
That's for Tony Blair's benefit, who expelled me for being a socialist, of course. But you're right about the European dimension. The fact that here we are struggling on the edge of Europe, not doing anything in coordination with them, leaves us very exposed, and otherwise we are dependent on Peter Mandelson forming a close relationship with Trump, which seems to me rather unlikely for many reasons, and we're going to be left isolated on our own and nothing but grovelling to Trump as an alternative. Now, I want to also...
What does that look like? Go on.
Well, I think it means that we are going to be heading into a recession, almost certainly a stagflation recession, growing unemployment, growing prices and so on, a crisis like, we had 20 or 30 years ago. There's a Scottish dimension as well, which I wanted to mention, James, coming from Edinburgh. The current opinion polls, the latest one I've seen, has Mr. Farage's reform in the lead. The likely outcome of this, I tell you what, Labour are so unpopular in Scotland now, not because of what they're doing in Scotland, but because what Starmer's doing in England. So the next Scottish Parliament elections, Labour are going to do extremely badly. The SNP and maybe Alba, my new party, might do well. But what's going to happen in Westminster is, I suspect, Farage is going to be your next Prime Minister. And that will cause people in Scotland to think more than twice and vote for independence, which they almost did in 2014. So there is a Scottish dimension to this crisis as well.
You've given me about 6 phone-ins in the course of one contribution to the programme. I got 6 different phone-ins. I mean, everything you've said is possible, and it's a little bit early to read too much into the polls, but the direction of traffic is profoundly worrying. Let me steer you back, if I may, to what that enhanced cooperation would actually look like. Gordon Brown writes today about coordinated multilateral action. He talks about the necessity of a coalition of the willing, and I sense there's probably not much love lost between you and Gordon Brown, but he has a fairly good track record when it comes to dealing with global financial crises, so he's at least worth listening to. What do you think that enhanced cooperation with the European Union could actually consist of?
Well, Gordon is an old friend of mine, although you're quite right. Politically, we somewhat parted over the years, particularly over Iraq and things like that. But Gordon, yes, to give him his due, did handle the last big financial crisis very well, 2008 one, which, of course, was caused by subprime lending in the U.S.
Yes.
Now the question is, could he do the same this time with Trump in the White House? I think extremely unlikely, and I think extremely unlikely that anybody can. I think your analysis is right, that actually it's not a conspiracy, it's an irrationality based on Trump's, deficient psychology. Let's put it delicately.
Unique
like
personality.
Exactly.
Here it is, though.
I don't think that... I don't think Gordon could have saved it this time, and I'm not sure that the EU can save us from Trump this time. I think it is a crisis that's going to result in a massive world recession and stagflation. I think it's possible that working with the EU, you see, the problem is, as you pointed out many times, James, we've already lost a major share of our market in the EU. We're about to lose a major share of the market in the US. So we're in a much weaker position, and that will lead to political change, which is the Farage element, and that, of course, will lead to the Scottish independence element, which...
you've done it again. You're not going to let that bone go. No, they absolutely, of course they are. I mean, of course it was bad enough for Scotland. Thank you, Hugh. It was bad, and thank you for the kind words at the beginning as well. It was bad enough for Scotland, I speak generically, to have to deal with Boris Johnson being Prime Minister, but the notion of Farage in Downing Street would be enough to definitely prompt irresistible calls for another referendum on independence. Some of the polling, if you're going to talk about it, and I don't generally yet because we are so far out, also raises the possibility of a Labour-Liberal coalition, a Labour-Lib Dem coalition. Liberal Democrats on some of the most recent polling I've seen are securing their highest results, their highest levels ever, and it opens the door to a Labour-Liberal coalition, which is a more natural marriage than the Conservative Liberal-Democrat coalition that we saw in 2010. And it did occur to me, if we're going to be fanciful for a moment, or not fanciful, but if we're going to be speculative and staring into our crystal balls just for a moment, as Hugh did, what about a coalition agreement that the Liberal Democrats, wherein the Liberal Democrats insist on meaningful moves back towards integration with the European Union? Ed Davey quite open about his desire to see a customs union or a single market. And if you make that the price of coalition, then it possibly gives Keir Starmer an opportunity to have his cake and eat it. He wants, I think, or at least he recognises the idiocy of Brexit, because before becoming Prime Minister, he was not shy of saying so. But he feels, rightly or wrongly, that it is politically impossible to move in that direction, or politically wrong to move in that direction at the moment. And if it were the price of coalition, if it were the price of power, would it give him the camouflage that he perhaps would need in order to get it over the line? I don't know. I'm thinking out loud. Hugh, thank you. The time is 10:46. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Remember, as I bid farewell to Hugh up in Edinburgh, it frees up a phone line for you if you're keen to contribute and haven't been able to get through so far. The number you need is 0345 6060 973. It's 10:46.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Oh, thank you. So Idiot's Corner has been a bit quiet lately because it just feels a little bit inappropriate, especially given that some of the more ludicrous contributions to the programme could have come from some quite prominent broadcasters or columnists, for example, claiming that the art of the deal is in any way relevant to the chaos that Donald Trump has unleashed upon the world, and which he was forced to humiliatingly abandon yesterday. And I'll go back to that point, for 90 days. But who here can honestly say, oh, yes, it will definitely be nice. Oh, yeah, you say what you like about Donald Trump. When he says he's going to suspend something for 90 days, you can bet your bottom dollar that it will only be, or that it will be, minimum, maximum, it will be exactly 90 days that he does it for. Absolutely no chance that anybody with that scintilla of wisdom would put a quid, would put a 50p upon the likelihood of that being a reliable contribution, a reliable commentary. But I want to just say thank you to Tyler, who is moving into Idiot's Corner this morning, because, again, in the spirit of little slogans that people have been handed to spare themselves the difficulty of understanding things or thinking about things, you mentioned the role that Gordon Brown played in the global financial crisis. And it still amazes me how many people in the United Kingdom are unaware of the record, if you like, internationally of what Gordon Brown and the late Alistair Darling did. I think I mentioned this to you earlier in the week. Alistair Darling flew to Europe. I think the meeting was in Paris, and he wasn't guaranteed an invitation because it was a meeting of Eurozone leaders. But Alistair Darling was charged with gate crashing almost that meeting while Gordon Brown flew to Washington. And there is one account which has Barack Obama saying to the sort of assembled and panicking meeting that Gordon has a plan, almost as if it were, don't worry, Gordon has a plan. And it was Gordon Brown's plan that was adopted by all of the major economies on both sides of the Atlantic, and which averted an even worse global financial crisis in 2008. That is a matter of record. The problem is, of course, once again, you return to the hideous vista of our bent and biased client media in this country, and people like Tyler respond to any mention of the facts regarding Gordon Brown by saying, he sold off our gold, or he sold off our gold, or he sold off our gold. And that is utterly irrelevant to the conversation about the global financial crisis. It's weird, isn't it? It's like that note that was left, and how many people felt that was economically relevant or economically significant to the likelihood of Keir Starmer's government doing a decent job. I find these little things fascinating, and I don't know that I'd have noticed their significance if I didn't do this for a living. But either you think about things and try to understand them, or you reach for relatively empty little sound bites and slogans which excuse you from the difficult business of understanding things, of trying to understand things. So Gordon Brown led the world out of the global financial crisis in 2008, and he's got a plan for the next one, which is very much on the horizon. Oh yeah, he sold the gold. Oh yeah, he sold the gold. Labour could be moving into government after 14 years of quite spectacular and unprecedented Tory failure, particularly on the fiscal front. Oh yeah, but what about that note about them all having run out of money? See what I mean? It's these lovely little slogans that spare people the difficult business of thinking about things and understanding things. And that is why you move straight into Idiot's Corner for making that point. Back to the phones and the question of what happened yesterday. I think we're fairly clear on that. Very few people since the first caller of the morning, Charlie and Putney, have had a crack at what happens next. I suppose Hugh provided us with some realistic possibilities, but they were beyond the sphere of the immediate impact of the tariff saga, the ongoing and far from over tariff saga. What is going to happen next, either in the specifics of that saga or beyond? Tom is in Wandsworth. Tom, what would you like to say?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that you have a very good producer. I think she's excellent at asking questions and sorting things out.
What a lovely comment, Tom. Thank you for that. I mean, I don't know that people recognise what a crucial role that is on a programme like this, and I'm grateful to you for bringing attention to. Her name is Eleanor, and you're absolutely right.
Thank you very much, Eleanor.
She's on the top of her game. What are you going to say now, having been so excellently produced by Eleanor?
Well, I want to say we're still in a crisis. We've got half the world's economy in a trade war. And this is going to cause serious problems for the rest of us. For one thing, China is effectively America's banker. They hold America's debt. And if they sell off all those bonds, all that debt, it could crash the dollar, which is a reserve currency. I mean, we are in very, very serious, deep, uncharted waters. We have not sailed out of them.
I think you're right. I hesitate to keep mentioning him because people may not have read the article, and it does contain this absolutely brilliant line. In a follow-up article, I will suggest how we might build a new order out of what are fast becoming the ruins of the old. There is Gordon Brown demonstrating a mastery of the hook and tease that I can only dream of. But he recognises that it's barely even a pause on the madness, and it's certainly not an end to it.
Well, there's going to, if they can make a new world order, it's going to take time, and there's going to be a lot of pain reaching it. I mean, for a start, let's say the tariffs are over 100% that Trump has imposed on China. China is going to have to dump its manufacturing somewhere. And the only place it can really dump them is in Europe. And that is going to affect European manufacturers who won't be able to compete with Chinese prices because their labor costs are so low. I mean, he's done it. Trump is screwed things up royally. And I answer your question, no, you cannot believe a word he says. But
which
we've
also,
known that.
Well, I mean, you've known that, and I've known that, but I've heard some people talking as if the man's a genius, and they're not geniuses, same sort of people. Well, the same sort of people that were bigging up Boris Johnson and encouraging people to vote for Brexit have seemed to have fallen under Donald Trump's spell, and some of them are too dishonest and disingenuous to even break out of it now. Is there any comfort to be derived from that inconsistency and dishonesty? So you can say, what you describe only happens if the tariff on China stays in place. He's bottled all the other tariffs, which means he's perfectly capable of bottling that one as well in the next few days.
I really don't see much of a silver lining, other than the fact it is forcing us to think of alternatives.
Yes,
and that we cannot rely on America. I mean, I don't think we can rely on America even if Trump wasn't in the White House, simply because half of Americans voted for Trump. And they voted for basically these sort of isolationist policies. And, he is a reflection of the American electorate.
I wonder. I wonder how many are looking at what is happening now. We know that even some of the people, very prominent people and very wealthy people who backed him, Tom, thank you for that. We know that they've had conniptions. We know that they've had a fit of the vapours. They've been clutching their pearls, and even though some of them are queuing up publicly to claim that he's a genius or to support him, and they are exactly the same people who were claiming 24 hours ago, 48 hours ago, that there was absolutely no way whatsoever that he was ever going to dial down, he was ever going to fall back, he was ever going to fold. If people that high up are having wobbles, if Navarro and Musk are at each other's throats, I don't know what figure I'd put on the proportion of the electorate that is either comfortable or with or supportive of what continues to happen. Thank you, Tom, and thank you again for saying those words about Eleanor. It's always nice to be praised on the programme, but it was a timely reminder, actually, that we are on air, nothing without the support of top-class off-air people, and I'd include Keith in that category as well, although whatever you do, don't tell him that I said so. It is coming up to 11 o'clock. It feels to me, despite Michael saying, can't you talk about something other than Trump, Boris or Brexit? I'll talk about the most important things going on in the world, Michael. If it embarrasses you because you voted the wrong way on two or three of those things, then I'm sure there are plenty of places you can go to get a diet of nonsense, lies, denials and refusals to apologise for misleading an entire country, or for encouraging a population to become the first in history to impose economic sanctions on itself. And I say the first. I used to say the only. I wonder whether we now share that crown with Donald Trump's America, which did essentially vote to impose economic sanctions on itself. Of course, that involves believing that Donald Trump intended to do what he then did regarding tariffs. Lots of people who voted for him and lots of pundits who supported him were adamant that there was no way he was going to do that. I think we've established that the stupidest phrase of 2025 so far, and it's only April, was don't worry about what he says. Don't focus on what he says. You've got to focus on what he does. I know him really well. That's the thing that people don't understand about Donald Trump, which has proved to be so wrong that it almost makes praise of Liz Truss look like a stroke of political genius. So no, I am keen to continue talking about it, but I do want to nudge the conversation forwards into this territory of what the future looks like, what a response might involve, and to pick up on one of Hugh in Edinburgh's points, whether or not this is going to change the calculus regarding UK-EU relations. It's 11 o'clock.
James O'Brien on LBC.
I love this from Mark. Will Simon Marks be joining you today? And the answer to that is yes. He'll be with us shortly after 11:30. And of course it's Thursday, so Mystery Hour will be upon us at 12 noon. I think I'm going to stop saying that epic world events notwithstanding, Mr. Howe will be with us at 12 noon, because epic world events are happening on an unacceptably regular basis. And still, some people perhaps don't appreciate the seriousness of the moments we are living through. This truly is a reversal of so much that has been taken for granted for so long. And we're in the middle of it, which means, of course, we don't know how it ends. And that is why, at least some mornings, it's the rear view mirror is more important than the road ahead. But I'd like to try, if I can, to look at both, not at the same time. That would make you go cross-eyed. But to remember that the road ahead is still something that we would like to have a vague idea about, but that the road we've already travelled down is the one in most urgent need of analysis. And I've got a wonderful clip for you of what happens when you stand up in Congress trying to defend Donald Trump's economic policies while he changes them. Literally, you're standing up giving evidence at a Ways and Means hearing, and the president changes the thing you're defending in the middle of your testimony. It's an incredible moment, and I think it is worth sharing, which I'll do shortly. But first, as promised, Freddie is in Birmingham. Freddie, what would you like to say?
Hi there. So, I think there's definitely scope to increase relations with the EU, because if you've got this massive China trade war, if you've got 104% tariffs, you can't trade effectively with that. It's just not going to happen.
It's more than that. It's more than that now. It's more than that now.
Oh, it's 125, isn't it?
That sums it up, really, doesn't it? 104, 125, 207, 300. It's like an auction. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, but those Chinese goods are going to have to go somewhere, right? China's got to still produce the same amount of stuff that it does, right, effectively, right? And we're going to have a serious conversation with the EU saying we are going to be hit by a lot of cheap goods, right? Whether that's electric cars, whether that's just anything, tables, chairs, all the stuff that China makes, right, that we buy, that's going to have to increase. They're going to, and that could have a massive effect on our domestic industries. And so,
and that can only be responded to in a coordinated fashion.
Yeah, because if we say, the only way is that if we're going to act as a bloc similar to the size of China, right? Because on our own, even though I think we're the 7th biggest economy in the world, we're still peanuts compared to China, right? So we need to do that in a coordinated way. The only issue I see is whether Keir Starmer's got the political capital to do that at the minute. I think if he does it now, at this early in his term, he does. But if he delays and delays and delays, then he's not going to have the space and room to do that.
So the opportunity shrinks as time passes, unless he gets in for a second time, and then he's got a carte blanche again. But it will be too late to have done anything about the current crisis.
Yeah.
So global inflation, Gordon Brown writes this morning, will rise, even after taking into account the deflationary impact of low-priced Asian exports, which you're describing. He also calls, as you do, for a coordinated response to this imminent tsunami of low-priced Asian exports, because, as you say, these products have got to go somewhere, and they will follow the money, and the money still rests in large part on this side of the world. The question is, and you don't need to answer this, you may not be able to, I'm not sure I can, what does it look like? What does this coordinated action look like? What does this enhanced cooperation, this closer ties with the European actually look like in 2025?
I think maybe you look at, even if you just ignore a customs union or something like that, maybe just a joint industrial strategy of saying, right, we all know this is what's going to happen, right? We all know this is what's coming. How are we going to deal with that? Even if we're not increasing or decreasing trade between these two blocks, maybe we think, what if we're going to implement tariffs, let's all implement the same tariffs, right? Because we can then get a bit of that negotiating power from the EU, right? We can kind of tack on there and act with them. Because if we implement 100% tariffs on China, they're not going to care, right? They're not going to be bothered. So we need that levy from China, from the EU, against China.
And to act alone is going to render us almost meaningless, but to act in unison with our biggest trading partner, which is still the European Union, as we begin to detach ourselves from our second biggest trading partner, there's a sort of ineluctable logic to it. I'll tell you what Brown says. Have you read this article?
I haven't actually, no.
It's really good, and I mention it only because your thoughts and contemplations have led you to a similar place that Gordon Brown is in this morning. It says a coordinated approach offers the chance not just to stabilise the world economy, but, to use a phrase from 2020, to build back better. For the UK, that means working ever more closely with the EU. And that's the bones, those are the bones, Freddie, onto which you've just put some flesh. So you could have a united tariff response, even though we haven't restored the freedoms, the 4 freedoms. We could act as if we were part of a union in the areas where it is free to do so, where it doesn't involve where it doesn't involve compromise or contradiction. What is to stop us from doing that? Answer: absolutely nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think one thing where we could come out better in this is to, as if you look at what happened with the US bond market, at one point Greek debt was not better value, but seen as safer than American debt, right? Yes. So I think we could see a benefit from this in terms of investment. I mean, there was an article in the FT about how loads of American hedge funds are moving their money to the US and their to the UK, from the US, and loads of their clients are. So there is a way to not maybe win, but do less bad from this than other countries. But we've got to do it well. We've got to have a strategy on how to deal with that.
And it can act independently. I mean, we would rather act with a sane and rational United States, but there isn't one at the moment. And Europe has lower inflation than the US, and it can reduce interest rates faster. And if it does so in unison with the United Kingdom, or if the United Kingdom throws its lot in with the European Union, then you're right. It's hard to see any downsides economically, but will there be downsides politically? And there, in a nutshell, is Brexit. Economically, it makes absolutely undeniable sense to go down this path, but politically, up pop the usual suspects, the charlatans, the spivs, the liars and the racists going, oh no, sovereignty, or oh no, betrayal, or oh no, they need us more than... Oh no, they can't say that anymore. So here is an argument that makes watertight economic sense. Why on earth wouldn't you do it? Answer: Daily Mail, Nigel Farage, Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg will tell more lies. And that's what Keir Starmer seems to be close to cowardice on, is his failure to actually tackle the lies, the misinformation that can leave a country where the United Kingdom still is, staring economic benefit in the face and saying, oh no, we don't want any of that because sovereignty, immigrants, something, whatever it might be, European army, I don't know. Freddie, great stuff, thank you. Al's in Glasgow. Al, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi. I think Hello. It's it's a difficult choice for Starmer, but then again, that's what we pay him for. On one hand...
You're damn right, yes, exactly. Get your flipping finger out, Starmer, and earn your wages.
Yeah, well, but on one hand, it's a question of being diplomatic and looking at it coldly, and how do we deal with it in a legalistic, business-like way. But there's a danger in that, and the danger, I think, is losing. If we're not appearing to be strong, we lose the respect from our allies. So I think he has to take a bit of a brave pill and be quite emphatic. I mean, ideally, I think he should just take the opportunity, if there never has been such a strong opportunity, to say, right, we're rejoining the EU. I think that's unlikely to happen, but ideally, that's what I would do. Call it a brino if you want. Call it a European partnership. But as long as it is as close as possible to make sure that the diplomatic side of it is easier than it is now. Now, the next thing I would do is deal with who I think could be real threats, maybe are already. And that is the combination of Vance, Musk and Thiel. Because they are concerned, I think, with control. Trump has got them into power, but I think he can be manipulated. And once he's in power, it's easier to keep it. And I think the control aspect is at the heart of all of this, and that means data. And if you look at the people who have close associations in the past, these three, when you look at the systems that are being used now by the government, including our defence service and including NHS and central government, I would take an approach like we did with Huawei. And that is to look at, really, are they what's the word, vulnerabilities for us, because I think their ability to use mass data.
And Palantir has got fingers in many, which is, I think, the company that you're referring to, or it's certainly the biggest of the problems you describe, has got fingers in an awful lot of government pies. And odd, isn't it, that the discourse, largely unchallenged discourse about the United States rapidly becoming a threat to British interests, a threat to European interests, a threat, I think, to the interests of every country on the planet except Russia, North Korea and Belarus, and yet not recognising what might be the second tier of that threat, which would be what these key characters who have, I mean, it's symbiotic, the relationship. You could say that he's put them into power and equally they've put him into power. I think if Elon Musk hadn't bought Twitter, there's a strong case to be made for Donald Trump not having won the last election. Not a cut and dried case, but a strongish case. And we're not looking at this question of what it is they want all of this power for. And data in the 21st century is power, isn't it? And Thiel's fingerprints are all over a lot of the stuff that you're alluding to. Well, I mean, in terms of prioritising tasks and dealing with what you're going to deal with first, I don't know that it would be at the top of the list, but it should certainly be on it. And at the moment, it's something that you don't hear about unless it is some expert analysis coming from America, Wired magazine being particularly good, or just well-informed friends like Al in Glasgow. And in terms of things that we don't know as much about as we should, Mario Draghi's report on European competitiveness seems like a starting point for introducing some of the boosts that we will need in order to thrive, even flourish in the world, the new world created by Donald Trump's destruction of the old one. Thank you, Al. The time is 11:30. Thomas Watts has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:34. Just by way of an aside, the claim that the people who were being spared the higher tariffs, everybody, of course, yesterday coming down to the 10% figure except China, which meant that Brexiters got 4 days to claim that there was a Brexit benefit in being on 10 when the European Union was on 20. The European Union came down to 10 yesterday, although you may not find that widely reported or loudly reported in the UK's client media. The press secretary, Caroline Levitt, was claiming that the countries that were being eased up on were the ones that hadn't retaliated. I think Trump said that, actually, not just her. Trump said he was only easing up on countries that hadn't retaliated, which must have come as a bit of a shock in Brussels, who, of course, agreed on Wednesday to hit US exports with retaliatory tariffs. So again, the idea that he can't trust a single syllable that comes out of his ridiculous gob is just there. Every minute, every story, every line of every story just contains proof that you can't trust this man as far as you would throw him. But he's an absolute genius, claim the supporters still on side. That the EU is getting a reprieve and the EU had retaliated. Point that out to the White House and they'll say, oh yes, but they hadn't retaliated yet. They'd announced the retaliation. They'd announced the point at which the retaliation would kick in, but we hadn't actually reached that point. So therefore it wasn't actually a retaliation. Incredible, really. Simon Marks is here. He joins me now to do what, Simon? To how many times can we begin our conversations with the same sort of existential shrug? I think is the phrase I'm going to go with for the moment. But how does Donald Trump style his way out of this one?
Well, they've already started, haven't they, James? I mean, we saw Caroline Levitt and Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, yesterday immediately going out to the microphones and insisting that this was always part of the plan. It all shows the genius of Trump, the art of the deal, Scott Bessent was talking about, referring back to Trump's famous book about how to run a business. But there is no coherence and there is total confusion even now about precisely where all of this is going, because even though he's clearly done a U-turn and an absolutely major policy reverse that he was insisting even up to late on Sunday that he wasn't going to engage in, what happens in 90 days' time? What happens when this review that he says is now taking place is going to come to an end? He's offering the markets a short-term boost, but he's not offering business in the United States or around the world any kind of clarity. He's also sort of in an imperial fashion indicating that there may be some industries within the United States that he agrees to exempt even from the 90-day tariffs. So that's going to lead to the major titans of industry in the United States preening even more before him in order to attract his favour. But I think it's really important to underscore that he has ripped the guts out of the heart of his economic policy. This is a man who said tariffs was his favourite word in the English language. He announced last Wednesday Liberation Day in the United States. He characterised it as one of the most important days in American history. We went through that ludicrous dog and pony show at the White House, that sort of Eurovision Song Contest style presentation of these tariffs that he was applying here, there and everywhere, but not, of course, in the direction of Russia. He then refused to back down. He insisted on social media and in conversations with reporters that the operation was a success. The patient had survived, but the operation was completely elective. I mean, he's taken a strongly performing economy and driven it straight into a wall, aided and abetted by those sycophants who surround him and who clearly have absolutely no capacity to protect him from his own worst impulses.
And that's largely, as you know, why they were selected, because anybody who was prepared, and there were some people in the first term who were prepared to point out the idiocy of some of his plans or to stay his hand or to persuade him to take his foot off the accelerator. There's none now in the White House, none in the administration at all.
No, absolutely none. And I mean, the people that surround him that have got even more omelette on their faces today than he has, include characters that were discredited before this all began, including, his economic advisor, Peter Navarro, the apostle of the notion of putting tariffs in place on countries all over the world, and Howard Lutnick, his Commerce Secretary, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, who was laughably last week arguing that the tariffs didn't have to be passed on to American consumers in the form of higher prices because retailers in the United States could simply absorb the price increases, or maybe even the producers overseas could, as he put it, eat the tariffs. I mean, none of that was ever going to happen. But again, to underscore the centrality of this to Trump's economic policy, the president was musing again last Wednesday when he unveiled all of this about the prospect of this policy being so successful that, as in the 1880s and the 1890s, when, remember, America was a much smaller country and also a far less egalitarian country in terms of offering assistance and recognition to all of its people, he had this idea that, the United States in 2025 might find itself in a position where it was taking in so much money as a result of these tariffs. He was going to have to open a Department of External Revenue to collect all the cash. And he postulated that perhaps it would be possible to fund the government only out of tariff revenues and then scrap income tax. That's how big the dream was. Now, what is he left with? He's left with an insistence that there have to be tax cuts for the wealthy, that he's trying to steer through Congress, although the House of Representatives Republicans there want to see even bigger public spending cuts than were contained in the president's original budget proposal. But what happens beyond that? Okay, tax cuts for the super rich, and how does he now restore confidence in the United States as a stable place for investment, given the roller coaster that everybody has been on over the last week? It's going to be very, very difficult to magic all that away.
Often we find ourselves circling familiar territory, although if I'm running with one of your analogies, the medical one, the tumour gets bigger every time we point at it, because, as you've reminded us, that the sycophants and the cronies that surround him are now in the position of celebrating the fact that he told such massive lies. Under their analysis of this having been the plan all along, they're going, isn't it brilliant? His lies are so enormous. They're the biggest lies. They're the greatest lies. But of course, they can't acknowledge that themselves. But that tumour is the same. And it occurs to me, listening to you, and using the markets as a measure or a reminder that he operates like a market. He operates in a 24-hour cycle. So as soon as you said what happens in 90 days' time, my inner voice obviously said, well, who knows whether it'll be 90 days. You can't trust the word that comes out of his mouth. But what he did yesterday was all about yesterday. What he did yesterday was all about getting him over this self-constructed obstacle that had appeared in front of him. The bond market's getting spooked. China or Japan or hedge funds or all or some of the above, dumping US Treasury bonds, creating a Liz Truss-style scenario. Even he recognised that he had to do something. He won't tell the truth about what it is that he's done, but it was all and only about yesterday. He could do something completely different again tomorrow.
Yes, and it's interesting that you reference Liz Truss, because this is a Liz Truss style scenario. It's what happens in a Liz Truss scenario without a 1922 committee, without the capacity of Republicans in Congress to begin any kind of formal proceeding, short of impeachment, and they're never ever going to do that, to get rid of him. So they are stuck with him. And what we realized, I think, yesterday is that the only guardrails that are vaguely in place are senior Republicans on Capitol Hill on this issue kind of finding their spine. I mean, it took them a while, and it was Ted Cruz of Texas over the weekend who really kind of led the pushback, saying, I'm not opposed to tariffs if they're short term, but if this is going to be, the long-term governing policy for the economy, that's going to be a problem. So that then provided the leverage for Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, to make this emergency trip to Mar-a-Lago over the weekend and say to the president, we're sailing into a heap of trouble here. You need to offer negotiations, because there hadn't even been the suggestion up until then that Trump was open to the idea of negotiations with the people who were on the receiving end of reciprocal tariffs that, of course, were not reciprocal tariffs in the first place. So the only guardrails that exist are Republicans in Congress locating a backbone and the captains of the tech industry and all the other major titans of commerce who have bent the knee before Trump, who were looking at their own bank balances and saying, what the hell is going on here? You've got to change course. Yeah. And
finally, Simon Marks, returning again to the theme of familiar territory, but getting bigger and getting uglier. Even the most cursory understanding of what has gone on points to epic contradictions. So if it was designed, as he has claimed, to create a queue of countries waiting to, and forgive my language, but I'm quoting the President of the United States of America, kiss his ass, end quotes, then negotiations would see a reduction in the tariffs. And yet at the same time, the rationale for the tariffs is the necessity of raising huge amounts of money so that he could then abolish or massively reduce income tax. They cannot both happen. They cannot both be simultaneously true. Correct. It's a negotiating tactic that will make importers change their views. They will make people importing from the United States of America charge less for the privilege, but at the same time, it's going to raise so much money that we can abolish tax. I mean, that's the upside down. That's Neverland.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was asked this at the White House on Tuesday by a reporter who said, so hang on a second, are you up for negotiations to get rid of these tariffs, or is this the operating principle? And his answer to the question was basically, it can be both. Well, it can't possibly be both, because if your operating principle is that you want to bring in so much money through tariffs that you want to get rid of income tax, that's doubling down and being committed to trade barriers and a trade war. Negotiations are designed to alleviate that, but then would reduce the amount of money that you were bringing in due to tariffs. I think it's also just briefly, James, making the point that before Donald Trump U-turned yesterday, he put a message out on his social media saying, this is a great time to buy. And he signed it DJT, which are, of course, his initials, Donald J. Trump. But they are also the 3-letter stock index abbreviation for his own company. And there are lots of people out there that appear to have read that message as, this is a great time to buy DJT. In other words, shares in his own company. And the notion that the President of the United States has not divested himself in any meaningful way from his businesses, and over the last week has engaged in the most apparently erratic market moves that any president has ever engaged in since the 1930s, and yet on the flip side of it, also has the capacity personally to benefit from his own major market moves, in any normal democracy would immediately spark an investigation.
I find myself thinking of Jimmy Carter's peanut farm surprisingly often at the moment, Simon.
If
and
only
the blind trust, of course, if only, yes, and the blind trust into which he put it for fear of being perceived, let alone accused of doing anything in the White House that might affect his own commercial interests. DJT. Perhaps, thank you, Simon Marks, LBC's US editor, perhaps DJT stands for Donald J. Truss. I don't know. It's 11:47.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10 to 12 is the time. I take your advice very seriously, as you know, and a couple of people this week have suggested that we should have paid a little bit more attention to Mary Trump, Donald Trump's niece, who is a clinical psychologist, and particularly earlier this week when we, I think, established beyond much doubt that the only way you can look at all this stuff is through the lens of Donald Trump's unique, and then you insert whatever word you want. You could insert idiocy, you could insert diabolical genius, you could insert narcissism, but whatever it is close to unique. And to be both a member of his family and a clinical psychologist arguably provides you with the heftiest imaginable qualifications to do what I've just described. And Mary Trump spoke to Jen Psaki, the former US press secretary, in September of 2024. And such is the mad rush of events. I can't remember what specific episode was unfolding in September of 2024, but Mary Trump makes a point that speaks directly to a lot of the stuff we've been talking about lately. And indeed, I think it was Charlie and Putney at the top of the show who talked about a degree of frustration with some of the journalism that's around, and this sense that we have that we need to provide traditional analysis, even when nothing about what's happening now is traditional or normal. I think that spell's been broken. I think Max Hastings in the Times yesterday, I think Edward Luce in the Financial Times earlier this week, I think some grown-ups, some big brains have acknowledged that it is a waste of everybody's time trying to analyse this through normal means, normal circumstances. But I was fascinated by Mary Trump's account of why and how that happens. Have a little listen to this.
In terms of his functioning on a cognitive level, absolutely there's been deterioration. I mean, Donald is somebody who has had severe psychiatric disorders for decades that have remained untreated, and any illness you have that you don't treat will worsen. And I think he's being pushed further and further because of Vice President Harris's success, because of his own failures, into a world that is more delusional. When he talks about how enthusiastic the crowd at the debate was, he's probably talking about himself. He was his audience for that debate in many, many ways. So I hope that more media outlets allow us to hear what Donald's actually saying instead of taking it upon themselves to, quote unquote, translate him. His nonsense is untranslatable. So what ends up happening, because human beings need to make meaning of things, is that certain reporters and journalists end up imbuing Donald's meaningless statements with meaning, so they don't seem as dangerous and, quite frankly, unhinged as they really are.
Yeah, good Lord, how well that has been vindicated by subsequent events, that interview in September of 2024. Let's go to Cornwall. Nigel is there in sunny Truro. Nigel, what would you like to say?
Morning, James. I'd love to
Hello,
say
mate.
Good morning, but it isn't a good morning. It's a bad morning. We're like many others. I'm sick to death of waking up or going to bed with the Emperor Trump's decrees in my ears. The comment, the repetition that Simon Marks said earlier is a great quote, and I actually wrote it down. And it was the last word in the phrase, tariffs is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. Tariffs will make us as rich as hell. And hell is what a lot of awfully normal, working, poor people struggling worldwide are going through. Just because every day they've got the decrees of Trump neurotically in their ears. He has the wisdom of the human beast. I call him the man with the goldfish lips, or Emperor Trump. I've started writing down things like a new addition to perhaps the dictionary of Trumposity, Trumpitis, Trumpishness, Trumpoxicity. You know, you can go on and on. I've got a whole list of them. They amuse me, but they frighten me. They frighten other people. This guy, brilliant to what you just played of his, did you say?
Niece.
It was his niece, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, she was so spot on. When I heard that the first time a while back, my ears pricked up and I went, that is the best analysis I've come across yet.
She's got him. She's got him, and she's got us. She's got journalists as well, not in an unkind way, but this weird impulse that we have to try to, as she said, human beings, not just journalists. We want to understand things. It's almost as if she's listened to this show for the last 2 weeks, and this desperation to understand the ununderstandable, to invent another word, Nigel. I kept knitting together everything you've just said. What do you think it would take to make you look away, to make you stick your fingers in your ears, to detach yourself from the drama, from the chaos? Anything?
I can divert myself with physical work around my place here in Cornwall, which always needs attention and care. I worry about. I spent my yesterday in the sunshine, relaxing with my son, adult son, talking about all sorts of things because I don't see him that often. I can divert myself by playing my music to myself or whatever. I can,
but you will then circle back to the reality because it's too important to ignore.
Well, unfortunately, I'm tuning into LBC or the TV news or whatever all day, 3 or 4 times a day, because I recognise that everything's changing by the minute and the hour. I mean, I wrote down this the other day: the wisdom of the human beast. I will win. I know best. I am superior to all others. My desires must and will be met. My God speaks to me of winning at all costs. Look upon me and tremble with fear. The weak will do my will. There is only one truth, mine. The planet is all mine. He regards the whole thing as real estate. He's a numbers.
You've got a combination of Ozymandias and the troll under the bridge in the three little. With the 3 Billy Goats gruff. There's an article you'd enjoy, Nigel, by a friend of mine called Edward Docks, and he wrote it a few months ago. If you Google that name, DOCX, and the word ogres, you'll find a wonderful article that I think it will appeal to your poetic impulses and it will share your analysis as well. So I'll let you have that one as we bid farewell at 11:57. I do want you to hear this, everyone to hear this. This is Peter Horsford, Stephen Horsford, forgive me, the White House's top trade negotiator. Jamieson Greer is being quizzed by the representative Stephen Horsford, and this. Well, I think you can probably work it out for yourself, but I'm going to say that job description of Jamieson Greer again. The White House's top trade negotiator before the Ways and Means hearing, so explaining and defending the White House's trade policy. And in the middle of his testimony, chalk this up. Example of things that would be the biggest story in town in normal circumstances, but which you've probably missed because there are so many bigger stories around at the moment. In the middle of his defence of White House trade policy, of which he is the top negotiator, White House trade policy changed, and he apparently knew absolutely nothing about it. Have a listen to this.
We've been discussing a variety of...
If you came here knowing that you were going to be turned off, that these tariffs were going to be turned off, why didn't you include that in your opening statement? Why didn't you reference that as part of your testimony?
Well, I don't disclose my conversations with the president, sir.
These were specific questions we asked you all along. What's the strategy? These are real consequences for the American people and small businesses. I had a group of small businesses in my office earlier today talking about the impacts of these tariffs on aluminum and steel. This is amateur hour. And it needs to stop. What does this even mean for your negotiating strategy? How are you in charge of negotiation if the president is tweeting about this from wherever the hell he is?
The president was elected, and he runs the trade policy, and I advise him and execute his trade policy.
Who executes the trade policy?
I execute the trade policy.
Did you know that this was happening?
We have been discussing all kinds of...
And there's another member of the cabinet, Bessent, who just canceled coming to the Hill to avoid talking about the market because it's in turmoil. This in just days because there was no strategy, there was no plan. The president chose to take actions that he didn't even have the authority to take, He's put our economy in disarray and near collapse. We have small businesses and Americans who are concerned about their well-being, people's retirement, people's 529 accounts went down because of this administration. We have people that are planning to send their kids to college this fall. People who are retiring whose benefits have declined. Is this market manipulation?
No.
Why not? If it was a plan, if it was always the plan, how is this not market manipulation?
It's not market manipulation, sir.
Well, then what is it? Because it sure is not a strategy.
We're trying to reset the global trade system.
That's
offshored all of our factories.
And what has that done? How have you achieved any of that? But to enact enormous harm on the American people, which was our concern from the very beginning. Tariffs are a tool. It can be used in the appropriate way to protect U.S. jobs and small businesses. But that's not what this does. So if it's not market manipulation, what is it? Who's benefiting? What billionaire just got richer? And all the while, there are not even any Republicans left in this hearing. They all left.
Understandable emotion from Representative Stephen Horsford there, as the White House's top trade negotiator, Jamieson Greer, came perilously close to being forced to admit he had absolutely no idea what the White House's trade position was. 529 plans, if you didn't know, are a kind of investment vehicle in the US for college funds. So they encourage saving for future higher education expenses in a tax-advantaged way. So they're college funds, tax-friendly college funds. And they went down as well. That was good, wasn't it? That was really good. But that's normal now. It's 12 noon.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Goodness me. I mean, it's always a welcome relief from the cut and thrust of current affairs, isn't it? And the grimmer the news, or the trickier the news, the bigger the relief that Mystery Hour can provide. But this week it feels particularly welcome. Well, it does, at least to me. And judging by the fact that I'd barely mentioned it and already you're queuing up to contribute, I think that you were pretty ready for it as well. There are still a couple of phone lines free. 0345 60973 is, as ever, the number that you need if you want to get involved. If you don't know what this is, if you are one of the people who tell me that they're arriving at the show relatively freshly, relatively new, in some cases having discovered us on YouTube, which is quite gratifying. You might be one of my new American listeners. This is very, very different from the other 14 hours of the week that we spend together. It is largely fun. That's really what we're here for now. It's also illuminating, or possibly even educational. The way it works is this: someone rings in with a question and someone else rings in with an answer. Full stop. There's even a board game. That's it. That's Mystery Hour. I mean, there are some very loosely applied rules about don't be boring, don't be repetitious, although that one doesn't really work anymore. Don't ask me about motoring. That one has kind of diluted a little over the years, but not to the point of disappearing. It's still unwelcome, I think it's fair to say. But the central point is that there will be an answer to whatever it is that is bothering you, puzzling you, and somebody listening to this will know it, and they'll ring in and tell you. Which means, of course, that you're not allowed to look stuff up. You're not allowed to Google or indeed use any search engine to get answers to the questions that somebody else asks. I wasn't joking when I mentioned the board game. Hey, big news on the board game front. A little heads up that I got earlier this week. We're looking at a travel edition of the Mystery Hour board game. So something that you'll be able to play on your travels, rather than needing the sort of table, like a traditional board game, needing the table or the platform in front of you. So I'll have news on that later this year. If you want to get your hands on the original Mystery Hour board game, then all you have to do is submit my favourite contribution of the week, my favourite question or answer, or, of course, ultimately neither. But if it's my favourite contribution of the week, you win a Mystery Hour board game. The full terms and conditions for that competition can be found at lbc.co.uk. And if you want to find out more about the board game itself, you want to get yourself over to Mystery Hour, all one word, mysteryhour.co.uk, where you can comfort yourself having failed to provide my favourite contribution of the week by buying your very own box, by buying your very own board game. The time is 8 minutes after 12. Mystery Hour is upon us. So, with no further ado, let's go to Norwich. Chris is there. Chris, question or answer?
Hi there. I've got a question.
Carry on.
So I was talking with my son about our cat and cats generally, and we got onto the subject of their whiskers and the idea that a cat's whiskers are the right width for the cat, so it knows like which hole to go through and not to go through and stuff like that. And then thinking that they would grow as the cat grows. But what if an adult cat puts on weight? Do the length of the whiskers change?
I like this question. We've done something similar before, but do the whiskers? Yeah, so we would presume that the widest part of the cat is not the head, right? It's not the face.
That's what I'm thinking. Like if it
can't be.
An adult cat gets fed too much, becomes one of those massive cats you see in the newspaper.
I've got quite a fat cat.
Does the whisker?
It's not fat enough to be in a newspaper,
you know?
but our cat is quite fat. I've bought one of those things, Chris, between you and me. So I've got 3 cats, and one of them is quite fat. So I've bought one of those bowls so that the other cats can access it with the chip they've got for the cat flap, but the fat cat won't be able to get in. So I'm trying to put the fat cat. I'm trying to put the fat cat on a diet, but in a way that means I can still feed the other 2 cats. It's harder than it sounds. It's quite tricky. Sure. But what I haven't done is see whether or not the fat cat's whiskers have grown further out than the.
Well, yeah, I guess you wouldn't measure them, would you? But
now you've mentioned it. Now you've mentioned it. If I'm at a loose end later this evening, I might go, but I've got nothing to compare them back to. So, given that we believe, I think correctly, that a cat's whiskers provide it with a fairly reliable indication of whether it's going to fit through the gap that it's approaching, do the whiskers grow as the torso grows,
or shrink if you succeed in helping it lose weight?
Well, I wouldn't need to shrink, would it? Because, I mean...
I guess you'd always...
Well, maybe.
Through,
yeah, exactly. What's your son's name?
My son's name is William.
Okay, well, we should endeavour to find an answer for William, but also less urgently for you as well, Chris. Thank you very much. 0345 6060 the number you need if you can answer that. I mean, who would know? Someone must have done. It strikes me as fairly fertile ground for academic inquiry. Matthew is in Richmond. Matthew, question or answer?
It's a question, please, James.
Carry on.
So I listen to you a lot, and I just had a question that you sparked yesterday of why do certain foods and drinks taste better?
Are you thinking of limoncello? Limoncello or banana liqueurs from the Canary Islands?
Banana liqueurs is what I had in mind, and limoncello. They obviously taste better when you're on holiday. And I wondered why they don't taste as good when you're back in drizzly UK.
Have you experienced this phenomenon personally?
I have, yes, especially with limoncello. I did not partake in the banana liqueur when I was in the Canary Islands.
I invented a cocktail with the banana liqueur.
I'm sure you did.
Did you want to know what's in it?
Yeah, why not?
You don't, do you? You sound massively unenthusiastic about the cocktail I invented.
I'm sorry, I just sound massively unenthusiastic about most things.
Is that your fate, like your resting Matthew voice? I have a similar problem with my face. My voice can be quite enthusiastic, but my face looks like a slapped backside half of the time. No, I'm not going to tell you. Well, all right.
On YouTube, so...
I look like a miserable git, even when I'm in a wonderful mood.
Yeah.
So I had to get rid of the banana liqueur, and you can buy vanilla vodka, so vanilla absolute, banana liqueur, and then I put something else in it as well, and it was a banoffee pie cocktail, which was all right, but it wasn't so delicious that I then went out and bought myself another bottle of banana liqueur. Once I'd got through the bottle of banana liqueur, that was the end. That was the end of the banoffee pie cocktail. Make of that what you will. But it's on the board, so there's probably a name for it. It's like a holiday tipple syndrome or something like that, and it does genuinely. Limoncello in particular, you think, God, this is absolutely delicious. And then you get home and think, I'll just have myself a limoncello. And you think, well, how did I ever enjoy that? It's like lemon washing up liquid. Except, with one exception, sometimes in a nice Italian restaurant, and they bring you a little glass at the end of the meal, even in London, even in England, and it goes down quite well. But it does never, ever, ever go down well at home. Matthew, it's a wonderful question. Thank you. Why is that? Why do some things, particularly alcoholic drinks, sweet and sugary alcoholic drinks, are delicious when you're on holiday? So you buy yourself a bottle, bring it home, pour yourself a little glass, and it's absolutely gross. It's the same bottle, the same stuff. Will is in Glasgow. Will, question or answer?
It's a question, please, James.
Carry on.
So why are drinks, overall, Bovril aside, why are drinks sweet mostly and not savoury? Why don't you get savoury drinks?
Well, I think you've answered your own question, really, haven't you? Is that we don't want them. Because Bovril proves that we could, if we did.
But why?
And is tea sweet? Well, I don't know why. It's just... Go on.
There's got to be a thing. I mean, you throw sugar into tea, and you throw...
Yeah, but if you don't put sugar
coffee.
in it... If you don't put sugar in it, it's not sweet, is it? If you don't put syrup in a coffee, it's not sweet. It is quite savoury. It's not meaty. It's not got umami in the way that a Bovril has. But some people drink drinks made out of gravy granules. But I think I'm going to put it on the board. Don't worry. But I think quite often when we do questions on Mystery Hour about why isn't there more of this, the answer is that nobody wants it. If there was a market for a nice yeasty brew, then there would probably be more yeasty brews available, but people don't want it. Well, do you drink savoury? Do you drink Bovril on a regular basis?
Oh no, nobody does. But why? Why do we have savoury food and sweet drinks? Why do you have a sweet drink with your savoury, salty food?
What about cup of soup?
No, soup's a food.
Don't be ridiculous. Soup is literally a savoury drink. It's called a cup of soup. Not a bowl of soup, a cup of soup.
No, I think
I don't. Well, I put it on the board, but more as an act of charity than as a genuine act of inquiry. just sound of a disappearing will, because soup is. I mean, is it a food or a drink? It doesn't really matter, but it is. Oh, and Indian masala tea as well. There are savoury drinks. Bloody Mary is probably a savoury drink, isn't it? Or even tomato juice would be a savoury drink. I don't think it necessarily stands as a question, but I'm in a very bounteous mood, whatever my face may suggest to the contrary, so I'm going to put it on the board. Thank you, Will. Rob is in Maidstone. Rob, question or answer?
Question, James.
Carry on, Rob.
Quick one. What determines the height a bird flies at?
So
the reason I asked that is because I thought to myself the other day, I saw some seagulls flying low, and then I saw some flying high, and I looked in the garden at the garden birds, bullfinches and robins, and I suddenly thought, well, do they fly high or do they fly low? What determines a bird how high they should fly or shouldn't?
Because you see, like a buzzard, for example, will be really, really high, or if you're driving up through Stokenchurch, you see all the red kites gathering over the motorway. Seagulls go quite high, but you don't. Garden birds, songbirds don't, obviously. So that's going to have something to do with wingspan, isn't it?
Eyesight?
Eyesight? What's it got to do with eyesight?
Well, because buzzards fly high, because apparently they've got amazing eyesight.
Oh, yeah, could be. No, of course it could be, in order to see prey. So depending on what you feed on. So if you're feeding on nuts and berries and things, you don't need to fly high. But if you're flying up high looking for roadkill or whatever it is that buzzards are looking for. So is there a limit? Could a pigeon, with the right encouragement, fly as high as a buzzard?
Exactly. This is what I'm trying to say. What stops the smaller
This is what
birds
Mystery
from
Hour is
flying
all
high?
about, right? But this is what Mystery Hour was invented for. Can a pigeon, with the right circumstances and encouragement, fly as high as a golden eagle?
Indeed.
This is what we want to know. I love it. So, yeah, and of course then you've got, is it Noel Gallagher or Liam Gallagher's band, High Flying Birds? It's Noel Gallagher's band, I think. So that's how I'm writing down your question as an aid memoir. I'm writing down High Flying Birds. Thank you. Rob, what determines how high a bird can fly? 0345 6060 973. I think Will hopefully realises the silliness of his question, but I said I'd ask it. Why are there only sweet drinks? Narrator's voiceover, there aren't. What explains holiday tipple syndrome when you enjoy a particularly sort of very sweet and sugary alcoholic tipple on holiday and you think it is the most delicious thing you've ever tasted, so you buy a bottle, bring it home, pour yourself one and almost spit it out immediately because it's so gross? And if it's true, and we think it is, that a cat's whiskers determine how capable it is of getting through a gap, so the cat's whiskers are like a gauge for the width of the torso, the width of the whole body. If a cat puts on loads of weight and becomes what is technically known as a fat cat, do the whiskers grow accordingly? All of those and more to come. The time now is 12:18.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 20 past 12. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where Mystery Hour is underway. I've done a recap on the questions, but I want a little bit of help with the 4 that are on the board, and there is, of course, room for a few more as well. Let's go to Edward, who's born in Lincolnshire. Edward, question or answer?
Question.
Carry on.
So where does the wax go when you burn a candle? Some of it drips down. I don't see it on my ceiling. Where's the rest go?
Well, I mean, you see smoke.
Yes. Is that all of the? Is that the whole candle worth of smoke?
No, some of it will melt, and you'll be left with a waxy residue. But the rest is the rest just You sound a bit suspicious, Edward.
It's just some conspiracy. I don't believe it. I thought.
Of course, it's not like a candle conspiracy. This is like vapor trails behind aeroplanes. You'll be claiming it's a sort of it's the FBI have got our candles. So so it's made of stuff. It's made of chemicals, some of which combust. And the ones that combust go out into the atmosphere as smoke. And a candle produces quite a lot of smoke. If you look at the ceiling, you'll see that I mean, if you burn a candle often enough in exactly the same place, you'll have, and the ceiling isn't too high, you'll have a mark there. But that's where it goes. I mean, it really is that simple.
Is the smoke not from the wick?
No, it's both. I mean, there'll be some smoke from the wick, but the candle the oil is. That's why it doesn't burn right down. The oil is created, the wax melts, the oil burns, and the smoke dissipates. Not as much as you'd think, because you get quite a lot of wax left over, but it is literally... I mean, there's only 2 possibilities. One is that it stays wax, and the other that it turns into gas or vapour or smoke or whatever, and that is the answer to the question.
Right, okay.
Unless big wax gets involved. The big wax conspiracies, or Davey says candle.
The air in our rooms.
Yes, it isn't very good for you. Candles are quite unpleasant environmentally. How many candles have you got?
Oh, I like to burn a couple over dinner every night.
Not 4?
Not 4, only 2.
Not 4 candles?
Not 4 candles.
But you have 4 candles at dinner, though.
Have 2 candles
otherwise you wouldn't be able to... no, 4 candles, otherwise you wouldn't be able to eat.
Right, okay.
That's not me. That's the 2 Ronnies. It's one of the finest comedy sketches of all time, and I'm very grateful to you for giving me an opportunity to shoehorn it into Mystery Hour very clumsily. But I'll put it on the board. I'll get you. I'll get you a proper answer to that. I'll get you a scientific answer rather than my slightly condescending duh. Where does it go? Carbon dioxide? I don't know. So can we find out for Edward, please? So wax, high-flying birds, sweet drinks, holiday tipple syndrome and the cat's whiskers. It's all going on today. John, all right, I'll have a go. Okay. John is in Penybont 4.
Very close. Penybont Vower.
Pennypont Vower. Okay. Question or answer, John? Thank you.
It's a question.
Yes.
In Korea, one of the most popular surnames is Lee. Right. However, Korean people don't say Lee, they say Ri. So why do we English-speaking folk believe they are trying to say Lee, but it comes out as Ri?
Have you spent a lot of time in Korea?
I've been to Korea a number of times, and
have you?
Yeah, and some decades ago, this question started plaguing me, and I've phoned you a few times and been unsuccessful with this question, but hopefully now somebody can tell us why we English folk assume they are trying to say Lee.
I get the question. I mean, there is for a lot of South Asian people that pronunciate it in the same way that a lot of, I mean, we can't roll our R's or whatever it might be. pronouncing the letter L is notoriously difficult. That's what we're describing. It's that phenomenon. Does it apply to everybody?
Well,
in Korea?
Whether this is down to a difficulty pronouncing the letter L, or they've never even tried to pronounce the letter L because they're all called Ri, and we're assuming they can't say L.
But their alphabet may not have an equivalent to the letter L in terms of the noise we make when we see the letter L. But the character might translate into what... So this could be a simple difference between written language and spoken language.
But if Korean people have been calling each other Mr. Ri for centuries, why does the English-speaking world think they're really trying to say Lee?
Because the letter translates on paper to something more like an L than an R.
Well, presumably the Korean letter comes out of Korean mouths as R.
Yeah.
And we English.
I'm mildly uncomfortable with the question because it works on a presumption that it's well, no, it doesn't actually. I think I'm being hypersensitive. There will be an answer to this, but
the presumption isn't that Korean people can't say L. The presumption is we believe they're trying to say L. The presumption is on our side.
Ah, you're right, and that is
the English-speaking world. They've never called each other Lee. They've always called each other Ri.
I like the question. Can we put it in a single sentence?
Why does the English-speaking world assume one of the most popular surnames in Korea is Lee, when in fact it's Ri, as spoken?
Yeah, okay, you're on. 0345 6060 973. That could turn out to be an absolute classic question. Or we could sit here and go, oh, goodness me, I can't believe we even asked it. Let's find out. I'm not allowed to read out text. I'm getting some interesting answers to that one in particular through already. Jonathan, I'm looking at you, but I can't, on Mystery Hour, take texts or indeed emails. Well, I don't take emails any day, but I can't do texts or WhatsApps. Thank you, John. Rena. Is it Rena or Lena? Sorry. Did you not hear the last call?
No, I didn't.
So the last... Oh, never mind. So it's Rena in Lee on C.
Yes.
The last call was about why... Korean people called Lee call themselves Ri, and you're called Rena and you're in Lee. I mean, this is ridiculous. I feel like I'm being pranked.
It's all part of a huge conspiracy, James.
It like the candles.
Yeah, it's like
question
that.
Question or answer?
I make candles.
It's just ridiculous. Go on then.
So I participated in a study back in the States, and it was an actual company that does these weird field studies. One of the things was we take bartenders out and put them on holiday and take them to a bar, right? So they put us on a boat, 7 bartenders, out to Catalina. This is you're on holiday. We're going to buy you lunch. The bar tab is open. Enjoy yourselves. The only thing is you're not allowed to order beer. You're not allowed to order a white wine. Or, a wine. You're going to order cocktails you've never had before.
Okay.
And what sparked this memory was when you were talking about limoncello, because I had a very bad experience with limoncello and ouzo, both on holiday. It did not end well.
No.
So anyway, the reason why
they creep up on you. They creep up on you, these drinks, because it's like you're drinking melted Haribo in the case of limoncello, or like melted aniseed balls in the case of ouzo, and so you're knocking it back with gay abandon, and the next thing you know, you are, as you say, in all sorts of trouble.
Yeah, I turned the color of limoncello.
Delightful. And, Carry on. Anyway, back to the question in hand.
Right. So we get when we're on holiday or we're in a new experience where our dopamines, our brain receptors, are open. We have a heightened sense of pleasure, of adventure. We feel safe because we're on holiday. We're looking forward. We're enjoying ourselves. We're having a huge dopamine hit. So if you have your banana liqueur, which as a bartender I can tell you that's a rarity. things taste better. Food tastes better. Cocktails taste better. The wine is more exotic and more flavorful. So it's an emotional. It's emotional, but also I guess, kind of a psychiatric or some sort of physical connection to your environment and to what you're experiencing, to a physical contact with food or with alcohol, with drink.
And that would explain why, at the end of a meal, there's a lovely Italian restaurant in Brentford called Syracusa, where the maitre d' might bring me a little limoncello at the end of my meal, and I will enjoy it in that circumstance because I've just had a lovely meal out with my family, and therefore my dopamine levels are higher than they would be if I was sitting on my patio thinking, oh, I'm going to have a little sip of that weird drink that I brought back from Italy.
Yeah, or they'll bring you a limoncello and ouzo. It cleanses your palate.
It does that as well.
And
I don't like including
they drink.
As a Hellenophile, I don't really like including ouzo on this list of drinks because I think ouzo is a drink you can enjoy in all circumstances. But unfortunately, lots of other people agree with you and would indeed put ouzo on the list as well. Qualifications: you did some actual academic research in this, and also were a bartender.
Yeah, I got taken onto the study because I'm a bartender. So they set bartenders loose on the island of Catalina. Off the coast of California, and said, so what did you think? And I said, I tried this drink and it was fantastic, and then you get back. And the next day they say, okay, we're meeting at this restaurant and we're going to have, we had the same exact cocktails, and it was like, oh yeah, that was good, but not as good as it is,
nowhere near as good as I remembered. What do you think the third ingredient was? What do you think the third ingredient was in the cocktail I invented? So it was banana liqueur, vanilla vodka, and there was another third ingredient I can't remember, but it was based on banoffee pie. So what might it have been? Can you think?
Creme de coco, a chocolate flavored brown liqueur.
No, it wasn't that, but that would have been
that would be the banoffee. Yeah. Well, my other guess would have been
biscuit flavor. Go on.
I mean, you could have done Bailey's.
I think I floated Bailey's on. I think I floated Bailey's on the. Would it float on the top? Going back before my kids were born, would Bailey's float on the top of a spirit?
If you pour it
like a French coffee
into it, it'll go to the bottom. But if you want to float it, it might float on top if you pour it over the back of the spoon. Maybe
that was it. Or I can't remember. It's so long ago. That was lovely. Round of applause for Rena, please. Thank you very much indeed. Amelia Cox is here now with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
So we got an answer. That's good. Cat's whiskers. Holiday tipple syndrome. We can cross that one off. Sweet drinks. Why are there no savoury drinks? Brackets there are, but, just being nice to Will Day. What determines how high a bird can fly? I love it when a question is also a poem. Where does the wax go when a candle burns? Don't ask me. It's Edward's question. And John's question about the Korean name Lee, which is potentially quite a sensitive question, but I'm confident that we'll be able to handle it in a suitably sensitive fashion. Jenny is in. This is unbelievable. Jenny is also in Leigh-on-Sea. Honestly, do you know Rena, Jenny, by any chance?
I don't. I was listening and I was really hoping that I would know her, but I don't.
But here we are, back in Leigh-on-Sea. Question or answer?
It's an answer.
Go on.
Right, it's an answer to the Lee and Ree question, which is even better, really, isn't it? So,
yes, it is actually. So you're in Leigh-on-Sea, just to be clear.
I am in Leigh-on-Sea. So all languages, there are these things called phonemes, and a phoneme is a sound that changes the meaning of a word. So in English, I and E are phonemes. So pin and pen are two different words.
Oh.
Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay, so in a lot of South Asian languages, the sound R and U, as in Re and Lee, they are not phonemes. They do not change the meaning of the word. So it doesn't change the meaning of the surname. So it may be that they're saying Re, or they're saying Lee, or they're saying them interchangeably, but because we have expectations around how Southeast Asian people speak, we hear it as Lee, because in English, Lee is a surname.
Well, I was kind of I was heading in the right direction, but I didn't know about the phonemes, and I didn't know about the sort of psychological prediction involved in hearing what we're expecting to hear sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And they occur in other languages, like in Spanish, but and the are, they're not phonemes. So my Spanish friend will say neighbour instead of neighbour because you can't hear the difference.
Of course.
And in Thai, they have aspiration, which we don't have, so we don't hear the difference. It's fascinating.
It really is fascinating. What are your qualifications?
I did a degree in linguistics.
Oh, that's incredible. It's
and I've got a first in phonetics. I've got to throw that bit in.
Get in. First in phonetics. This is a fantastic contribution. And what it means is that without any sort of fear of racial stereotyping or anything like that, I can say that this has been a particularly good episode of Mr. Hour.
Nice. Yeah.
No,
nice.
Sorry. All right. Well, I liked it. I thought. Thanks, Jenny. Have a round of applause on me.
Thank you.
No, I love it. I find linguistics absolutely fascinating. And I think Jenny just highlighted why in spectacular fashion. 0345 6060973 is the number you need if you want to join in. So Jenny has answered John's question, and we go next to Brentford, sunny Brentford. Paul is there. Paul, question or answer?
It's an answer.
Have you ever had a limoncello in Syracuse or in Brentford, Paul?
No.
Oh, all right. You know the one I mean, just down by the canal, opposite the Holiday Inn?
Yes, I do.
Lovely Italian restaurant. Anyway, you weren't expecting that. I feel like I've hijacked you. What would you like to say? What's your question?
No, it's the answer.
Go, what's your answer? Sorry.
It's to the wax candle question.
Yes.
So, wax is a hydrocarbon. So, fundamentally, it's a fuel. And fundamentally, it's no different to methane and petrol and diesel. The only difference is the size of the molecule, which is why it presents itself as wax.
Okay, got it.
So when you burn it, the oxygen in the atmosphere combines with the carbon and the hydrogen in the wax to produce carbon dioxide and water.
So the water goes off as steam and the carbon dioxide goes off as gas.
Yeah, so it doesn't, nothing can change, stuff can't change into nothing. It's the conservation of matter. The amount of stuff before is the same as the amount of stuff after the reaction. It's fixed.
But it's different stuff.
Exactly, because the energy in any substance is in the chemical bonds. Now, another thing I'll tell you is about the fact that reaction happens to be exothermic. And
I was about to say there'll be some heat energy being released as well.
Well, it's an exothermic reaction because the bonds that make up the wax have more energy in them than the bonds that make up the carbon dioxide and the water. So therefore, that excess energy is given off as heat.
So there's three side effects or three productions.
Well, heat is a product, but it's not stuff.
Yeah.
So heat is a form of energy.
But it is an energy. It is an energy.
It's actual energy. Yeah.
This is a lovely answer. And actually, I bet old Edward is delighted with this. And in fact, I love it when the answer is more interesting than the question made you think that it would be, because you've gone to town on that. What are your qualifications, Paul?
Well, I've spoken to you before a few weeks ago, and I'm still a science teacher, and I am still in my 44th year of science education.
Unbelievable. I love it. And you have that. I think I said this to you last time. I can tell that you do this for a living because you've got that ability to communicate. In this case, not super complicated, but complicated enough. And you've done it in a completely comprehensible way. Thank you, Paul. Have another round of applause.
Thank you very much.
Oh, there we go. No, thank you very much. And if I ever see you in the vicinity of the Holiday Inn in Brentford, I'll buy you a limoncello, I promise. Or possibly we'll pop in and both get a freebie. There are 3 Italian restaurants in Brentford. I feel that I'm favouring one over the other two, and they serve slightly different purposes. So you've got Syracuse, which is like a kind of modern Italian with a nice traditional menu, and then you've got La Rosetta, which is absolutely perfect traditional trattoria. And then there's the new one, which is run by 2 lovely sisters, one of whom was on MasterChef not long ago, and that's called Rottura, Rottura, and that has quite a short menu, but really, really sophisticated cooking, really lovely cooking. So I tell you, and there's a cinema there now as well, an Everyman Cinema. It is becoming the coolest suburb of London. And who thought that would ever happen, eh? Thank you, Paul. Marcus is in Mitchett in Surrey. Marcus, question or answer?
Question, please.
Carry on.
Why is it that golden syrup tins always stick to the shelf?
Well, because the golden syrup has leaked out.
Yeah, but why don't any other tins leak?
Well, they do, but the contents aren't as sticky.
Well, no, surely, though, if it's other stuff, it'll go off.
Well, it's not the only tin.
You don't find bean juice all over your cupboard.
No, it leaks when you open it. You would find baked bean juice all over your cupboard if you were putting open tins of baked beans back in again, and if getting the beans out of the tin, because it's so viscous, Marcus, it's almost impossible. The same is true of honey. It's not just golden syrup. The same is true of
well, no, because
honey.
they stick to the shelves in the shop.
Do they?
Yeah.
No, only if there's been an accident.
It's stuck to the, and you have to give it a
only if there's been an accident. Only if there's been an accident in what's the word I'm looking for? Transit. There's been an accident in transit, and something has opened in the crate in the cargo, and every tin has got a little bit of syrup on it, and they've tried to wash it all off, but there's some bits have remained, and therefore they're sticking to the shelf. I don't think this is a mystery.
Well, I've got a new tin in my cupboard, and that sticks as well.
Well, you might have sticky cupboards, mate. How often do you wash your cupboards?
I know.
Marmite sticks? But no. Yearly? Oh, you animal. That's disgusting. Do you keep your syrup in the same... Do you keep the syrup in... Do you keep the syrup in the same space in the cupboard all the time?
No. It's just random. So it just goes in there where it lands.
Oh, well, I'll put it on the board because I'm in an extremely generous mood today. But I don't really see what kind of answer you're expecting, other than there's some syrup on the outside of your tin, and the same happens to honey, and for some people even Marmite. The harder it is, the more viscous it is, the harder it is to get it out.
Marmite and honey comes in jars.
Yeah, I know, but they stick to the shelf as well.
No. No, it's only golden syrup.
No, so I've got honey in my cupboard that is stuck to the shelf at this moment in history.
Syrup there before.
I did not have golden syrup there before, and black treacle as well would be the same as well, and that's in a tin. So I don't know what you're... They don't stick to the shelves if they haven't been opened, unless they've been involved in some sort of transit accident. And it's not unique. And the reason it happens is because you can't get the syrup out of the tin or the honey out of the jar without a little bit of it dangling off the spoon or the knife and going down the side of the jar, going down the side of the tin. I think this is all self-evident, Marcus.
Well, we'll see.
We will see. But you might have sticky cupboards, mate. That's going to be my new catchphrase. Thank you, Marcus. It is 12:46.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 12:49. I still need answers to the following questions, and there is room on the switchboard to provide them, and there is a Mystery Hour board game up for grabs, so don't hold back. When a cat gets fat, I can't turn this one into a poem. When a cat gets fat, do its whiskers get longer? Because its whiskers, we have always believed, tell a cat whether it will fit through a gap. So if it's got fat, it will no longer fit through a gap that it used to fit through, which means that theoretically its whiskers must have adjusted to accommodate the new girth, the new size, the fat of the cat. 0345 6060 973. Why are there only sweet drinks? Brackets there aren't, but we'll ask the question, and we're indulging Will today. How do birds? What determines? There you go. We got there in the end. How high a bird can fly. We've done the wax question. That was rather brilliantly answered by Paul in Brentford. No doubt to Edward's enormous satisfaction. We've done the Lee question. Jenny using her linguistics degree and her first in phonetics to spectacular effect. And Marcus wants to know, and listen, don't blame me. Don't shoot the messenger. Marcus wants to know why his golden syrup tins stick to his shelf. I thought was blooming obvious, but here, it's not. It's your show as much as mine. It's your show as much as mine. So I don't want to. And yes, I will stop using. Quite a few of you asked me never to use the phrase yeasty brew again, and I think that's a reasonable request. I will never again say the words. In fact, this will be the last time I think I ever say the words yeasty brew. Beryl is in Belvedere. Beryl, question or answer? Beryl?
Oh, Beryl, yeah, sorry.
Where do you think you were?
The answer. I don't know the answer. No, I don't know why, but they do. It does stick. It does leak. It does leak
why have you
out
rung
even
me?
if you haven't opened it.
Oh, I see. Does it?
So
How do you know?
No, I don't know why it does. I told him I didn't know the answer. I just saying.
Have you ended up on the radio by accident, Beryl?
Sorry?
Have you ended up on the radio by accident? This is like Withnell and I going on holiday. I've come on the radio by mistake. I've come on the radio by mistake, says Beryl. So you've had sticky syrup tins that have not yet been opened.
I've had a brand new one. It's never been opened, and it leaks out. It does leak out from somewhere at the bottom.
You put me in a very uncomfortable position.
I'm sorry about that, but I
don't believe you.
It does leak.
I don't believe you.
Well, I don't tell lies.
I think you might be mistaken. I think. Do you have dirty cupboards?
No, I do not.
How often do you clean your cupboards out, Beryl? With a hot cloth, I mean, not just.
How do I know that?
Not just the tea.
When they need clean. My cupboards are clean.
Well, yeah, you say that.
I've thrown that tin of treacle away now because it did leak and it's never been opened.
And did you clean the cupboard after you threw it away?
Yes, I did. Of course.
With a hot cloth and disinfectant?
It's with dental wipes, yes.
I don't know. I mean, this. I don't know that this call has advanced our cause at all, Beryl.
Sorry?
I don't think we've advanced any closer to the answer to the question.
So. But they just said, someone said on there that it must be something wrong with transfer and everything. It's not. It does leak. It does leak out. I don't know the answer. I'd like to know the answer actually.
Yeah. So you've rung in to ask the question again, really?
I don't know.
I don't want. I don't want you to start. I don't want you to set a precedent, Beryl. I don't want. What if everyone starts ringing in to ask a question they like again? I might never get past the first question. I'll have 30 people every week ringing in to ask the same question.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
Question.
I'm sorry.
I'm
tell you what,
Beryl.
I won't ring this number anymore. I listen to your.
Don't say that, Beryl. Don't say that, Beryl. Don't say that. I'll miss you.
I listen to you all night, so.
Well, that's like. I mean, we are very proud to have you on board.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Now, what are you going to do this afternoon? Give your little cupboard to clean.
And right, what's that? You said
I think you give your cupboards a clean. Give your cupboards a little clean this afternoon.
My cupboards are spotless. You can come in my house any time and have a look at my cupboards.
Well, the weather's nice. Would you eat your dinner?
Every day. I'm a fanatic for cleaning.
Would you eat your dinner off your cupboard shelf?
Yes, I would.
Oh,
yes, I would.
There
yes, I would.
That's me told.
My cupboards are clean. My cupboards are clean. But I've got nothing else to do. At 90 years old, what else can I do?
Bless you, Beryl. Bless you, Beryl. And I was teasing you. I would never, ever cast aspersions on the cleanliness of your cupboards in good faith, Beryl. It was just a cheeky jibe from me, for which I apologise. Promise me you'll ring me again.
I will. I promise.
All right,
then.
You take care, Beryl. Take care. That was Beryl. She's got filthy cupboards. Kieran's in Sligo. Kieran, what question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on.
On the Korean pronunciation, your previous was a Jenny. She was quite right about the phonemes. But in fact,
thank goodness.
The question was about Lee. And Lee is not actually, Lee or Ri is not actually the name. The surname in Korea is E, simply E, as in MC squared. Just E. And in order to make the language a bit easier for Westerners, they tend to put an anglicized version of that sound. So E becomes Lee. But there's they don't distinguish L and R, they don't distinguish F and P. So somebody could as likely ask you, would you like a cup of coffee for coffee?
Got it.
Because it's an entirely different language with entirely different phonemes and a completely different and highly logical written alphabet. And you're probably going to ask me, how do I know this?
Well, I would, if you give me a chance, Kieran, I would say, what are your qualifications?
Well, I worked in Korea and learned a little bit of the written language. Very difficult to learn the language itself.
I bet, yeah.
But I subsequently married a Korean lady whose surname is E, which is pronounced Lee.
So no one says Ri?
They don't say. Re or an L is kind of the same sound. So it's kind
no,
of,
I know, but the original question from John said that when he's in Korea and if he said to your wife, "What's your name?" she would say "Re," not "E." He thought.
No, she would say Lee probably because they're all aware that they use this anglicized version of their word.
So it is to make it comprehensible to a Westerner.
Exactly.
There
So,
it is.
And there you go.
Qualifications married to an E. Married to an E.
Married to an E.
Round of applause for Kieran. I love this. Oh, Mr. R.A., what would we do without it? Thank you, Kieran. Karen, from Kieran to Karen, all the Ks, in Nottingham. Karen, question or answer?
It's an answer, James.
Carry on, Karen.
I'm answering the cat whisker question.
Oh, marvellous. Go on.
I have 7 cats. I've just been round and measured all of their whiskers. They are a variety of shapes and sizes.
Yes.
And I can confirm they're all between 2.5 and 3 inches long. No difference between them.
I don't know that this answers my question. So the fattest cat has got the longest whiskers?
No.
What?
No, he hasn't. The thinnest cat's got the longest whiskers. Yep.
Oh, this is just insane. This makes no sense at all. But you haven't. You can't do it in a day.
Completely unscientific.
It's not. It's the beginning.
No.
It's the beginning of an experiment. So what you need to do now is select a cat. Do you have a least favourite of the 7 or a most favourite? Don't be shy. They can't hear you.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Right. So one of these cats needs to be fattened up, Karen. You need to put one of these cats on a very high calorie diet, and then in a month, when the cat has become visibly fatter, you need to measure its whiskers again and see if they've got longer. Is it an urban myth? This is the other thing that
I think it might be.
It could be an urban myth.
Yeah, because how come I've got a 3 kg cat whose whiskers are almost the same length as a 6.5 kg cat?
Wow.
That doesn't make any sense, does it?
And they're of observably different widths, girths.
They're observably different girths. Yes, they are. And I can also confirm they don't like having their whiskers touched. So, I now need some plasters for my fingers.
So that means next week. I'm sorry to hear that. So next week someone's going to ring in and say, is it true that cats' whiskers help them decide which cat's got the biggest head?
I would say that's one of the ones that's about 6 kg.
The one with the long... Oh, so that doesn't work out. Anyway, I'm going to give you a round of applause, Karen. I'm giving you a round of applause. All right. But next time I want pictures, all right? Next time you're measuring the cat's whiskers, I want live footage, ideally with a kind of commentary. I can squeeze in one more, I think. Bushra is in Ickenham. Bushra, question or answer?
Answer, please, James.
Carry on, Bushra.
So the drinks being sweet only, that's not true. It's a cultural norm. So my parents are from Pakistan. Yes. So salty lassi is actually a very common and popular drink. We even put
very delicious.
It is. And it's really, I've innovated, but after a run, it's really good for replacing your salts. And we even put salt and spices on our fruit.
Oh, wow.
Additional piece of information, which is...
I put a black pepper on strawberries sometimes. That can be quite nice, but I don't know that I've put salt, because it's activating your taste buds in exciting and unexpected ways.
It's once you get used to it, I can't really have a fruit salad without, we call it chaat masala, so it's a mixture of spices and salts.
Is it savoury? It's definitely not sweet because it is salty. And he's only allowed one question, so he can't really then add savoury because he said, "Why are all drinks sweet?" And you're proving that they're not. A salty lassi is quite a popular beverage all over the world, but as you say, particularly in Asia. Qualifications, Bushra?
Well, my parents are from Pakistan, so cultural knowledge.
Qualifications. I drink a lot of salted, or I have over the years drunk a lot of salted lassis.
True, that as well.
Yeah. No, you're on. Round of applause for Bushra. Oh, perfect, Mr. A, that was. One of my all-time favourites, that, actually. So thank you, everybody. That is it from me for another day. If you missed any of today's show, you can... Oh, I have to pick a favourite, sorry. Well, Beryl, obviously.
James O'Brien on LBC.